Good day, everyone, wherever you are in this wonderful wide world. Welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe, and it's been a great week. We've had tellers from Colombia, we've had tellers from Ireland, and we've had tellers from Texas, and of course here in the UK. And I've listened to them all, and I've allowed the stories to wash over me. And I've drifted off and I've drifted back. And I'm drifting back to my own stories. And I'm going to tell one of my favourite stories. It's a story from Scotland. It's called Kate Cracknuts. And it's from way back in time, when mountains were taller and rivers were deeper and forests were thicker. And there was a king. He had one daughter, a beautiful princess. But he had no queen. And in those days, if a king wanted a new queen, he just popped out and he got himself a new queen. That queen had a daughter exactly the same age as the princess. And the princess and Kate, for that was the daughter's name, became great friends. But the queen was one of those people who wanted her daughter to be better than everyone else. And she thought about it. So I know, I'll go up to the hen wife, the wise woman, the witch, who lived on top of the hill, and I'll ask her advice. And she went and she knocked on the wise woman's door. Yes, Queen, what do you want? She was a bit of a Republican, was her wife. Well, everyone in the city thinks the princess is more beautiful than my daughter Kate. Is there something you can do about it? Well, said the hen wife, thinking long. Tomorrow morning, send her up for 6 eggs for the king's breakfast, but make sure she has nothing to eat before she comes. Well, the next day, the princess got up and she walked through the kitchen. And she liked to walk before breakfast, so she wasn't that hungry, but she smelt the fresh toast with jam on it that the maid had. And she was spreading jam on the fresh toast, and that smell went up her nostril. Oh, whoa! Well, everything started churning around her stomach. She just asked the maid if she could have just a little sliver. And of course the maid said yes, so she's walking out through the rose garden, chomping away at that toast with fresh jam on it. And being a princess, of course, she took off that little piece of jam that got in the corner of her mouth. And she went into the vegetable garden where the gardener's boy was collecting peas. She walked up the hill to where the hen wife lived. Knock, knock, knock. Yes, girl, what do you want? 6 eggs for the king's breakfast. Very well, go to the jar and table, unscrew the lid, lift the lid and take out the eggs. She went to the jar and table, she unscrewed the lid, lifted the lid, took out the eggs. Nothing happened. Henwife knew she'd had something to eat before she'd come. Very well. She said, tell the queen to make sure the pantry door is locked. Well, when the queen got the message, she knew she'd had something to eat. She pretended not to be angry, but the next day she saw her through the garden, through the kitchen, through the rose garden, and into the vegetable garden where the gardener's boy was collecting peas. Well, when I was little, my mum used to give me a brown paper bag with peas in pods and a colander and a saucepan. I was supposed to break open the pods, put the peas in the saucepan, and the pods in the colander for the compost. But we've all done it, haven't we? Break open the pods, 4 in your mouth, 1 in the saucepan, 4 in your mouth, 1 in the saucepan. Well, by the time it's finished, there's about 5 peas in the saucepan, and you've got stomachache. Well, it was a bit like that with the princess. She asked the gardener's boy if she could have a handful of peas in pods. And she's walking up the hill, and she's breaking open the pods, and she's putting the peas in the mouth and throwing the pods over her shoulder. It's okay, they're biodegradable. She came to Henwife's house. Knock, knock, knock. Yes, girl, what do you want? 6 eggs for the king's breakfast. Very well. Go to the jar and table, unscrew the lid, lift the lid and take out the eggs. She went to the jar and table, unscrewed the lid, lifted the lid and took out the eggs. Nothing happened. Henwife knew she'd had something to eat before she'd come. Tell the queen to make sure the pantry door is locked. Well, the next day, The Queen saw her through the kitchen, through the rose garden, through the vegetable garden, halfway up the hill. So by the time the girl went knock, knock, knock on the henwife door, the princess had had nothing to eat at all. Yes, girl, what do you want? 6 eggs for the king's breakfast. Very well. Go to the jar and table, unscrew the lid, lift the lid, take out the eggs. She went to the table, she unscrewed the lid of the jar, and she lifted that lid, and as she lifted that lid, her head jumped off of her shoulders and into the jar. A sheep's head jumped out of the jar and onto her shoulders. Ah! I got a sheep's head on my shoulders. You'd be embarrassed, wouldn't you? Well, some of you would. Some of you might. Whoa, I've got a sheep's head on my shoulders. Yes. But she was embarrassed. She took a shawl, she put it round her head. She went and hid behind a hedge. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Kate began to wonder where her best friend was. She looked behind that hedge, it wasn't there. She looked behind that hedge, it wasn't there. She looked behind that hedge. There was the princess. Kate, I got a sheep's head on my shoulders. Well, Kate was the kind of friend you'd want in a crisis. Nothing worried her. Well, if you've got a sheep's head on your shoulders, we'd better find a way to break the spell. We'd better take a journey. And they travelled for a long way and further still, till their feet were sore and their throats were dry. And they came to a great castle. They knocked on the front door of that castle. It creaked and it squeaked as it opens. Like it does in all the best stories, at least that's what my friend Hugh Lupton says. And there stood an old servant. Yes, girls, can I do something for you? Well, my sister is very ill and we're very tired. Have you got somewhere where we can stay the night? Well, as it happens, said the servant, upstairs is an ill prince. And if you look after him for the night, of course, you can stay. But they went up and there was the princess asleep one side, sheep's head on her shoulders. There was the prince on the other. There was Kate in the middle making up the fire. And at midnight, the prince got up and he walked round the room. Kate followed down the stairs. Kate followed into the stable. Kate followed. The prince got on a horse. Kate got on behind him. They rode through the forest. Kate is taking hazelnuts from this tree and hazelnuts from that tree and putting them in her apron. And they ride till they came to a great hill. And the prince shouted, open up, for it is a prince and his horse. And the green hill opened and they rode inside. And Kate, realizing she was in the land of fairies, hid in the shadows. 2 dancers passed by. If only Kate knew. If she could get the stick off the baby in the corner is playing with, and touch her sister on the head 2 times with it, her sister would be totally cured. Well, you know what happens if you take something off a baby. Yeah, it cries. So she put her hand in her apron and she took out a handful of hazelnuts. And she rolled them across the floor in front of the baby, and the baby dropped the stick and crawled out after the nuts. She ran across, she grabbed the stick, she put it in her apron. When it was time to go, they rode back through the forest, horses put back in the stable, they went back up the stairs, the prince got back into bed. Kate got the stick, touched her sister on the head 2 times with it. And would you believe it, her sister had her own head back. Well, the next day, the king of that castle came up with the court doctor, and that doctor was so miserable he shouldn't have been allowed to treat children. Well, how's me boy today, said the king. Well, he's no better, said the doctor. Well, at least he's not any worse, said the king, and thank you very much for looking after him. What's your name? Well, Kate, said Kate, spraying nuts across the whole room, because at that moment she happened to have a mouthful of hazelnuts. Kate Cracker-Nuts, more like it, said the doctor. That's as maybe, said the king, but I'm very grateful. Will you look after him one more night? Well, the girls had nothing better to do, so they agreed. Well, that night there was the princess asleep one side, her own head on the shoulders this time. And there was the prince asleep on the other, and there was Kate in the middle making up the fire. And at midnight the prince got up and walked around the room. Kate followed down the stairs. Kate followed into the stable. Kate followed. The prince got on a horse, Kate got on behind him, and they rode till they came to a green hill, and the prince shouted, open up, for it is a prince and his horse, and the green hill opened, and they rode inside, and Kate, realising she was in the land of fairies, hid in the shadows. And 2 dancers passed by. If only Kate knew. If she could get the dead bird off the baby, it's okay, it's quite fresh, it's just fallen off the rafters, that the baby in the corner is playing with, and get the prince to have 3 mouthfuls of it, the prince would be totally cured. Well, it's one thing getting a stick off a baby, but dead bird, something else. You know, pull the tendons of the leg. Old claws do that. Of course, they don't do that sort of thing in biology anymore. Well, she put her hand in her apron, and she got out the nuts, and she rolled them across the floor. The baby dropped the bird, ran out, crawled out after the nuts. Kate ran across, grabbed the bird, put it in her apron. When it was time to go, they rode back through the forest. The horse is put back in the stable. They go back up the stairs. The prince gets back into bed. Kate gets the bird, puts it on the end of a stick, and starts cooking it on the fire. Well, the smell of cooking went under the prince's nose. And she had to take the feathers off first, you understand. And the prince was one of those people who didn't have to be awake to be hungry. And his hand went out, and she broke off a piece of the bird and put it in his hand. Went out again. Went out for a 3rd time. This time, oh, forget this. She put the whole bird in his hand. He put the whole bird in his mouth. He spat the bones out onto the floor. But by this time, he'd had his 3 mouthfuls, and he was totally cured. And he was bouncing off the bed, and he was bouncing off the ceiling. He was bouncing off the 4 walls. And the old king came running up to see what all the noise was about. And he was so pleased to see his son was cured. He offered Kate his son's hand in marriage. He offered the princess his son's younger brother hand in marriage. There was a great wedding, and there was masses to eat and even more to drink. And of course, had you been there, each and every one of you would have been invited. Why, Ben, story end. Oh, well, maybe a little story in rhyme, I think. I was putting a children's book together, and I thought, it was poems, and I thought, we haven't got anything about monsters. So I thought, I'll do a monster poem. So it's called Monster Hunt. Me and my friend Joey thought, just for a change, that we'd go monster hunting on the monstrous mountain range. Joey said, we'll need supplies, that is what I think, so he packed some peanut butter sandwiches. Oh, you don't like peanut butter? What do you want in your... Oh, cheese. So he packed some peanut butter and cheese sandwiches. You don't like that? You'd like a little banana in yours. So he packed some peanut butter, cheese and banana sandwiches. You prefer ham? Okay. So he packed some peanut butter, cheese, banana and ham sandwiches. What was that in the back? A bit of hummus. Hummus. So he packed some peanut butter, cheese, ham and hummus sandwiches, and banana, of course. Oh, you want some jam in yours? So he packed some peanut butter, cheese, banana, ham and jam sandwiches and hummus. And cans of fizzy drink. Well, Joey had a BMX and I had a mountain bike. We went as far as we could in those, and then we had to hike, witness walk. We'd not gone far up the mountain when Joey called, look over there, it's the barbless, razorless monster, the one that's all covered in hair. When they went a few steps closer, the monster let out a roar. Can we have a big roar, everyone? 1, 2, 3, roar! No, better than that. 1, 2, 3, roar! You can't scare us, said Joey. That stuff doesn't work anymore. Then the excessively hairy monster with the enormous hairy head called us over to a rock, and this is what she said. If you've come monster hunting, then I'll put up a fight. I'll gnash my teeth and throw some stones and roar with all my might. But I suspect that's not your wish, that you only want to know if monsters really do exist, and how tall do they grow, and are there many different sorts, and where do they all live? Well, there's answers to your question that I'm prepared to give, providing that you promised me you come with good intentions. After all, we've been around for quite some time without your intervention. That means poking your nose in. No problem, answers Joey. That is understood. Now, why don't you tell your friends we're really very good and we don't want to upset them or ruin their routine. They haven't come all this way for a monstrous display. You're the only one we've seen. Now the excessively hairy monster put a finger each side of its teeth and let out one ear-piercing that made the ground tremble beneath me and my friend Joey so much that even she looked perturbed. That's frightened. And then from each side of the mountain came the loudest noise we'd ever heard. And they came with a rumble and tumble, and they came with a squelch and a crunch, and they came with a huffing and puffing, and they came with a gobble and munch, and some of them had 6 heads, and some of them only had 2. And some of them were purple, and some were pink and blue, and some had hair on the palm of their hands, and one had hair on its nose, and one was as bald as the day it was born, and one of them seemed to glow. And when they came up to the rock of the hairiest of them all, they were more than a little curious as to why on earth she'd call so many of the mountain's monsters in the middle of the working day, and what could be the kind of game she'd invite them mate all to play. "I won't keep you long," she whispered, "but I've a sight that's really worth seeing. You might not have seen them round these parts before, but this is a human being, and there is another. Though they're not fully grown, I think they're wondrously strange, and by far the most curious creatures to be found on this mountain range." Then Joey pulled out our sandwiches and offered them around, and without any fuss, the monsters and us sat down upon the ground, and we had to agree as we munched out the lunch. Although mountains have their attractions, we'd best cycle home, leaving monsters alone, trying to work out our human reaction. Whew. Where should we go? I think I'm going across Europe for a bit. I started in Scotland, came back to some kind of indefinite place with monsters. And I think I'm going, well, when this story was first told, it was called Bohemia. And it was Czechoslovakia. And now it's the Czech Republic. And that's confusing. You know, borders aren't permanent. Stories, well, they just fly around in the ether, land wherever they feel. And this one landed on me, and I told it to a Czech lad when just after the changes, when the wall first came, when about 1990, 91, and he said he gave me a line that actually made the whole thing make sense. Because it was, of course, before Disney in Eastern Europe, the folk tales were just passed around. Well, this is it's another king in this one, but this one's not very clever. And he's out in the forest and he gets lost. He comes up to a hut in the middle of the forest and he knocks on the door. It's opened by the charcoal burner. Now the charcoal burner is the poorest man in all of the land. And he says, charcoal burner, show me my way back to the palace." "Well, I'd love to, your majesty," said the charcoal burner, "but my wife is very ill. She's expecting a baby tonight. Go upstairs and lay down on the clean straw, and I'll take you tomorrow." Well, the king wasn't best pleased. I mean, he was used to feather beds and 4 posters round it and little curtains. But you know that moment when you're so tired you could sleep anywhere. And the king was in that state. So he went upstairs and he lay down the clean straw, and he soon fell fast asleep. And in the middle of the night, he heard a howling and a wailing and a screaming, and he looked down through the floorboards, and there was the charcoal burner with a newborn baby in his arms. And there were 3 witches, and the first witch took the boy in the arms and said, "I give this boy the gift of great dangers." And the second witch took the boy in her arms and said, "I give this boy the gift of escaping from those great dangers." And the third witch took the boy in her arms and said, "I give this boy the gift of marrying the newborn daughter of that king that's sleeping upstairs." "What? The queen has had a baby girl while I've been away, and that girl's going to marry the son of the poorest man in all of the land?" cannot be possible. So the next day he came down to the charcoal burner and he said, charcoal burner, this is no place to bring up a baby boy. Send him to the palace, and he will be looked after by the servants. And I'll give you a bag of gold. Well, you know, baby, bag of gold. Baby, bag of gold. Well, the charcoal burner's thinking, well, he's not going to have a very good life in the forest with just me looking after him, and you know, and he'll probably better looked after with the servants, and it is the king asking, and, well, there is this bag of gold involved. So he agrees. So the next day after he got back to the palace, the king turned to his servant and said, take this bag of gold, give it to the charcoal burner. The charcoal burner will give you a baby. On the way home, throw it in the river. If not, you'll be tasting water yourself. Well, the servant wasn't that happy, but, well, he thought he'd do it. So he went and he gave the charcoal burner the bag of gold, and he was given the baby in the basket. And on the way home, he was crossing a bridge across the river. And he leant over and he took that baby in the basket and he dropped the basket and baby and all straight into the river. And he went back and he told the king he'd done exactly as he'd been asked. But as it happened, the basket had landed the right way up in the river, and it floated down to the mouth of the river, and there was a fisherman pulling in his nets, and as he pulled in his nets he noticed the basket, and he pulled out the basket, and there was the baby, and no harm had come to it. Well, the fisherman had no children of his own, and he brought him up as if he was his own son. Well, years later, the king was riding through his land. Hello, peasants, how are you? You isolating nicely? Oh, very good, your majesty. Hello, festival goers? I know you haven't got any festivals this year, but, you know, how are you feeling? Oh, we're doing all right, your majesty. Very good, your majesty. Thank you, your majesty. Hello, fisherman. Why, fisherman? That's a fine boy you've got there. Is he yours? Well, said the fisherman, 18 years ago to this very day, I found him floating down the stream in a river in a basket. And having no children of my own, I brought him up as if he was my own son. Well, the king realized that this was the charcoal burner's boy. So he turned to the fisherman and he said, this is no career for a fine young man. Send him to the palace, and he'll be given a job with the palace guard. Here, I'll write a letter of introduction to the queen. He wrote, Dear Queen, this boy is my mortal enemy. When he gets to the palace, cut off his head immediately. Signed, the king. Wrapped it up, put the king's seal on it. Boy walked off with a letter in his pocket, thinking he had a letter of introduction to the queen. Well, luckily, it took longer than a day to reach the palace. And that night he came to the hut of the second witch, and he knocked on the door. Come in, she said. I will, he said. Sit down, she said. I will, he said. Lay down, she said. I will, he said. Go to sleep, she said. As soon as he was asleep, she put her hand in his pocket and she pulled out that letter. She read it. Dear Queen, this boy is my mortal enemy. When he gets to the palace, cut off his head immediately. Signed, the king. Impossible. She thought this is absolutely true. She took a hand and she wiped that letter and all the words fell off. And she took a quill pen and wrote in the king's own handwriting. Dear Queen, this boy is the finest young man I've ever met in my life. When he gets to the palace, make sure he marries my daughter immediately. Signed, the king. Wrapped it up, put the king's seal back on it. Boy put the letter back in the boy's pocket. Well, next day the boy carried on and he came to the palace. And he went to the queen and he gave her the letter and she read it. Dear Queen, this boy is the finest young man I've ever met in all of my life. When he gets to the palace, make sure he marries my daughter immediately. Well, she was a bit surprised. But the king was a funny old stick, and if that's what he wanted, that's what should happen. So the boy and the king's daughter were married. Well, when the king got back, he was furious. He said, well, if you're married to my daughter, there's nothing I can do about it. But you must bring me 3 presents. Bring me 3 golden hairs from the head of Grandfather Orno. Well, if that's what you want, that's what I'll get, said the boy. And he set off on his journey, and the first place he came to was the river. And there was a ferryman rowing people from one side of the river to the other. And as he was crossing the river, the ferryman said, where are you going? He said, I'm off to see Grandfather Orno. I'm glad you're off to see Grandfather Orno, said the ferryman. But I have been stuck on this ferry for 5 years. Can you ask him how I can get off the ferry? The boy said he would. And the boy carried on till he came to a city. And the people of that city took him to their king. Their king said, I'm glad you're off to see Grandfather Orno. For through the city used to flow a stream. And if you're very ill and very near death, if you drunk from that stream, you'll be well again. But that stream hasn't flowed for 5 years. Can you ask him how to get the stream flowing again? The boy said he would. And the boy carried on till he came to a second city. And the people of that city took him to their king. And their king said, I'm glad you're off to see Grandfather Orno. But in the city grows a tree. And that tree used to bear fruit. And if you're very old and very near death, if you ate of that fruit, you'd be young again. But that tree hasn't borne fruit for 5 years. Can you ask him how to get the fruit and he's back on the tree? And the boy said he would. And the boy carried on till he came to a hut of the third witch. And he knocked on the door. She said, yes. She said, I'm looking for Grandfather Orno. You've come to the right place, she said. For I am the mother of Grandfather Orno. And that Grandfather Orno is the son. And in the morning is a baby, and at midday is a young man, and in the evening is an old man, and he'll eat anyone, and he'll eat you. You'd better hide under a trough. The boy went in under the trough. Well, that night, in came Grandfather Orno. I smell humans, he said. Of course you do, dear, said his mother. You've been going round and round the earth all day, and you've been making it incredibly hot, and everybody smells. Now put your head on my lap and let me stroke your long golden hair and go to sleep. He put his head in her lap. She stroked his long golden hair. As soon as he was asleep, she pulled out one of the hairs and sort of thought, Mother, I'm trying to get some sleep. I'm sorry, she said, but I was having this dream. I dreamt I was in a city, and in that city grew a tree, and that tree used to bear fruit. And if you're very old and very near death, if you ate of that fruit, you'll be young again. But that tree hasn't borne fruit for 5 years. And I can't get back to sleep until I know how to finish the dream and get the fruit back on the tree. Easy, he said. All you've got to do is dig up the tree, take the snake from around its root and plant the tree somewhere else. And by that very night, there will be fruit upon the tree. Thank you very much, he said. Go back to sleep. She stroked his long golden hair. As soon as he was asleep, she pulled out a second hair and sort of thought, Mother, I'm trying to get some sleep. I'm sorry, she said, but I was having a dream. And I dreamt I was in a city, and through that city used to flow a stream. And if you drank from that stream and you were incredibly ill, you'd be well again. But that stream hasn't flowed for 5 years. And I can't finish the dream until I can get the stream flowing again. Easy. You go to where it starts, go to the spring, put your hand down the hole and pull out the toad that's blocking it. While your hand's down there, clean out all that nasty, mossy stuff as well. Thank you, said, go back to sleep. As soon as he was asleep, she pulled out the third hair. Mother, I've got a day's work to do tomorrow. Let me get some sleep. I'm sorry, she said. But I was having this dream. I dreamt I was on a ferry. There was a ferryman rowing people from one side of the river to the other. And he'd been stuck on that ferry for 5 years. And I can't get back to sleep until I know how to finish the dream and get him off the ferry. Easy, he said. All he's got to do is wait till he's got the passenger, row the passenger across the other side of the river. When he gets to the other side, he hands the passenger the oar and steps off himself, and the passenger will be stuck just like he is. Now, Mother, let me get some sleep, or I'll eat up that boy that's hiding under the trough. To be sure he slept well for the rest of the night. Well, the next day, after Grandfather Orno had gone to work, the boy is given the 3 golden hairs and the 3 answers, and he sets off on his journey. The first place he comes to is the city with the tree. He gives the king the answer, and by that very night, would you believe it, there was fruit upon the tree, and the king was so pleased. He gave the boy 6 black horses and a bag of gold. The boy carried on till he came to the second city. And by that very night, the stream was flowing. And that king was so pleased, he gave him 6 white horses and a bag of silver. And the boy carried on till he came to the river, and the ferryman said, what's my answer? He said, I'll tell you on the other side. And he got off on the other side. He said, the next passenger you get, hand them the oar and step off yourself, and the passenger will be stuck just like you are. Thank you very much. And the The boy carried on with his 12 horses, his bag of gold and his bag of silver, till he came to the palace of his father-in-law, the king. And the king saw the horses, and he saw the gold, and he saw the silver, and he asked the boy where he got them from. And the boy told him all about the stream, that if you were very ill and very near death, if you drank from that stream, you would be well again. And he told him all about the fruit on the tree, that if you were very old and very near death, if you ate of that fruit, you'd be young again. And the king said, I could do with some of that water. I could do with some of that fruit. And he set off on his journey. And the first place he came to was the river. And as far as I know, that king is still rowing people from one side of the river to the other to this very day. Whoa. Well, thank you for listening. You have been brilliant. You're a wonderful audience. And if you like the story, well, there's a little hat below. Maybe drop something in the hat. If you can afford it. If you can't, just pass on the story to someone else or tell them about this site. Well, storytellingcafe.com. And enjoy the other stories for the rest of the week, and the week after that, and the week after that. Thank you. Goodbye.